Put
Are
it
they
in
watching this?
put it in
Is
the
this
hype
is this
video.
bulletin board? No,
No, put them in the hype
no.
video. You got to be on high alert every week, and I think LSU and Florida are both going to bring out the best in each other.
Basically, their first real game on the road at Tennessee. That's tough.
The South Florida Bulls are going to be number one in the Set It Off rankings this weekend.
If they win this game, you'll start believing in them too, right?
No. Welcome in, you guys, to the Set It Off Network. I am your host, Michael Setatal. Will is joining me not from his closet, but from another unidentified room in his house today. But we have a jam-packed show today. This is going to be our Week 3 preview. We are in college football all-go mode right now. We have probably our most jam-packed weekend that we've had this season. After last week's little bit of a down week, we had some crazy upsets. We had some crazy things happening in college football, which just made this week even better. We're going to be previewing games like Florida and LSU. We're going to be talking Georgia going on the road to Tennessee, and probably the biggest game of the weekend, Will, is going to be USF in Miami down there in South Florida. A little bit of a rivalry game. We got probably the top playoff contender from the G5 level right now, and the favorites to win the ACC going at it. We also got two other games. We got A&M and Notre Dame this weekend, and then Clemson at Georgia Tech, a game that could very well decide the ACC. So it's going to be a jam-packed show. What's going on, Will? How you doing, bud?
I'm doing good, and I'm loving this slate we have coming up, Week 3. We're finally getting into the meat of some of these conference schedules, some big-time SEC matchups this weekend. And I just have a feeling we're going to be looking back at some of these results come December. And some of these games are going to make the difference between teams making the playoff and not.
Yeah, and we're going to go ahead and jump right into our first game that we're going to preview this week, and that is Florida going on the road to LSU. And there's a lot of Tiger fans out there. There's a lot of Florida fans out there that watched their games last week. And obviously, LSU came out with the victory. Florida didn't. But I don't think either fan base is extremely excited at the moment watching their teams play. You really can't put too much stock into, I think, these lower tier games, even when you win or lose by a lot. I don't think those results really matter that much. But Florida didn't get it done. They dropped one to USF. The offense really struggled, Will. And bad boy Sunbelt Billy down there. That seat was a little cool to start the season, but boy, that thing fired up in a hurry down there in Gainesville.
You're not wrong about that. Gator fans are not happy. You're not supposed to lose to South Florida. We believe South Florida is actually a good team, but still, you're not supposed to lose to that, especially with this gauntlet you have in front of you. And their first SEC game, go on the road to Baton Rouge, LSU. Like you said, LSU, are we so sure they're good, as good as we thought after the way they played last night? And, I mean, that Clemson win might not look as good anymore because I'm not sure if Clemson's so good. But I think Florida's going to be coming in there very inspired after that result last week. They're going to have to get this thing turned around, or it's going to be a long season and might be the last season for Billy Napier.
Yeah, it's never good when your AD has to put out a statement that's saying he's supporting the coach after the second week of the season down there in Gainesville. But from the LSU side of things, I feel like LSU fans are probably even more nervous about this game than they probably were 24 hours ago. Even with Florida losing, I honestly think that just adds to the pressure of the game because, I mean, Florida's in full wounded animal mode, Will, and you know how these teams get from week to week. Things change in a hurry, and all it takes is one good week of preparation and putting a good game plan together, and you can get right back on the bus towards the playoff because technically Florida has everything in front of them. They play the toughest schedule in the country. This loss would not affect them if they continued to play well and win in some of these games. So as an LSU fan, from this side of things, you watch the Louisiana Tech game, and your biggest concern coming out of that thing is injuries. What is the number one thing when we talk about these games against FCS schools and lower tier G5 schools? It is obviously winning the game is number one priority, but The second number one priority is staying healthy, and LSU did not accomplish that. Their starting center, a 4-year starter at Virginia Tech, transferred in. The leader of this offensive line at center, Braylon Moore, goes down with a high ankle sprain. He is listed as questionable right now for the Florida game. And we saw LSU's run game completely disappear in the La Tech game when he was out. So that is a major concern from LSU because that offense against Louisiana Tech looked just like the offense last year, where it was just you were asking us to drop back and throw the ball 40 times a game, and that is not LSU's recipe for success. But the other big injury news here, and this one we know for sure, thankfully it's not season ending, but Trey'Dez Green, the star tight end, caught the touchdown, or game-winning touchdown against Clemson. He has a sprained MCL, so he's going to be out a couple weeks. A little bit of injury troubles there for the Tigers. So those are two big losses for the offensive line and your number one red zone target. So it is not ideal situation here for LSU. But if you're LSU, you have to find a way to get this offensive line to play better so you can establish the run. And my takeaway from this game between these two teams that really the offensive line struggled to run the football in both of their last two games. So in my opinion, who do you trust more? Do you trust DJ Lagway going into a 6:30 night game environment in Death Valley, or do you trust a fifth-year senior in Garrett Nussmeier at home with the way LSU's defense has been playing lately? It's hard for me to not go with the Tigers, but I can't lie, Will. I'm super concerned about this game. The line right now is set at about 6.5. Could be creeping up closer to the 7.5 mark now. But I mean, I'm just as concerned as if Florida never even lost this weekend.
Yeah, I would be concerned. I think Florida, I mean, I might be wrong, but I think they're going to be coming in there inspired, trying to save their season before it gets off the rails too much. And I mean, just remember, Florida beat LSU last year, and that was a Florida team that found some inspiration towards the end of the season. And it kind of felt like that win over LSU propelled them to a really strong finish that had everyone so high on them to begin with this season.
Yeah, the whole DJ Lagway Billy Napier marriage here is kind of like this is why Billy Napier almost still has a job, right? Because you wanted to keep DJ Lagway for this season, but man, if you're just looking at what Florida looks like right now, DJ Lagway is not playing up to the standard that I think they thought he would be at. And Florida, obviously, in general, losing a game to South Florida is not playing at the standard that they thought they would be playing at. You're talking about a team that was ranked 13th in the country last year, now going into this game unranked, and a team in LSU that's a top 5 team in the country. But you said it. I mean, this is where you can change your season or you can continue to downhill spiral. This is kind of what the SEC is this year. I don't think there's anybody that's really going to separate themselves. So you got to be on high alert every week. And I think LSU and Florida are both going to bring out the best in each other. I don't see this as like a LSU is going to be looking past Florida because they know this rivalry and how close it is every year. And obviously, you got to remember last year, if you win that game in Gainesville, Will, you're playing for the SEC championship against Texas, and Georgia's not. So you had a chance with the playoffs on the line last year in Gainesville, and they took that away from you. So that's got to add a little fuel to the fire and help Brian Kelly motivate these guys if they need any motivation to play a Saturday night game in Tiger Stadium. All right, so moving on to our next game on the schedule. College game day is going to be there. Good old Rocky Top, Will. It is Georgia and Tennessee, and I looked it up, Will. The only time Tennessee has beaten Kirby Smart while he's been at Georgia was that crazy Hail Mary back in 2015. It was a wild one back in the day.
I remember that one, yeah.
But yeah, man, that goes down in like Tennessee lore as far as like crazy endings. I'll never forget watching it live. It was absolutely unreal. But we both know that Tennessee is going to be rocking on Saturday, and Georgia coming in, obviously going to be favored in this football game, but I'm more interested here to see how Gunnar Stockton, in his first road SEC start, how does he respond? Because we've seen, like, Alabama the last 2 times they've been to Rocky Top, it has not gone well, and we talk about it, and we can beat this horse into the ground, but these new quarterbacks in these leagues between, a lot of these top tier talented teams. They have a good talent profile, but they all have new quarterbacks, and Gunnar Stockton fits that profile. So how does Gunnar Stockton and that offense look with Neyland Stadium bearing down on them? Tennessee's going to have a good defense. We'll see what the offense does. The offenses look great over the last 2 weeks, but you played Syracuse and you played East Tennessee, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't think those teams are great. Well, and you have a completely different animal, a team that you haven't had very much success. You've had a chance the last couple times you played them to kind of make that statement and make that jump to the top tier of the SEC that you wanted, and you haven't been able to get it done. So Tennessee fans are fed up losing to Georgia, and Georgia fans expect the Dogs to go in there and keep rolling Tennessee just like they have in the past.
Yeah. Hey, you talked about before the show. For those of us listening and you can't see it, I'm wearing a Georgia polo. I
Oh
have a lot
boy.
of Georgia people in my life, and I actually live in Georgia, so gotta do it. I'm still a Cock fan. But anyway, it's a big game for Georgia, and this really feels like the first game of the season for them. They had two cupcake teams to open the year. Georgia fans not feeling so good about how that game against Austin P went. You're looking at a game that was 14-3 at halftime against an FCS team. Ooh, I don't know. But now your first real game of the year, and what do you have to do? Go to Rocky Top. That's going to be a big, tough challenge for Gunnar Stockton and the Bulldogs to take on there.
Yeah, so I think this matchup obviously comes down to the two quarterbacks. You have Joey Aguilar out of Tennessee, first year starter in the SEC. He's going to be going up against the best defense he's probably played in his entire career. He started there at App State, but moving to the SEC in a Kirby Smart led defense, that is not an ideal situation for any quarterback. But we talked about it. The road advantage goes to Tennessee as Gunnar Stockton travels for the first time on the road. And yes, Georgia has tons of talent, but I think this game is going to be won and lost in the head coaching game because I love Kirby Smart over Josh Heupel. I mean, Josh Heupel is a good coach, and what he's done at Tennessee can't be slept on. But we're talking about a guy who's probably the best coach in college football at the moment, if you asked a lot of people. And I just can't put that piece aside of it. And, if I had to put my money on it right now, I'd probably say Georgia rolls in this one. I think they probably cover in this one as well. They cover that touchdown. I just don't see this Tennessee offense doing what they've been doing over the last 2 weeks against this Georgia defense. And, maybe I'm wrong and it's a high powered shootout game. We've seen those before. But, man, it sure feels like Tennessee last year really struggled against the elite teams to score points. I mean, we're talking about a Josh Heupel offense last year that in 3 of their games against ranked teams did not even score at the half. So, I mean, they still have that kind of hanging over their head. I'm still not sold on the Tennessee offense, even though they put up a ton of points. It hasn't been against good competition, but like you said, Georgia hasn't, done their fair share of beating up on the little guys the last couple weeks either. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. I think it's going to be one of the better games of the weekend, and I'm glad College Game Day is there because those Tennessee people love it, and there's nothing like a good old Saturday in Rocky Top.
And I will say this too. Think about when this game has been played the last several seasons. It's been a game that you've seen in November. By then, these teams have figured things out. Georgia has figured things out. Now they have to figure things out. Basically, their first real game on the road at Tennessee. That's tough. So we'll see what will happen here. Can Georgia get it done? I'm leaning that way. I am wearing Georgia's shirt, right? But we'll see. I think it's going to be a heck of an environment and a heck of a game.
I got a good note for those Gamecock fans since we're not previewing South Carolina and Vanderbilt this week. I will say Georgia playing these games in September kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it, Will? There was a team over there down in Columbia, South Carolina when the old ball coach was down there that used to love playing Georgia week 2, week 3. He had his reasons. We're not going to talk about him on the show. Georgia's in enough
Can I
legal.
talk about the quote he had?
Yeah, go ahead,
Do
man.
you remember his quote? I think he was
Only if
like, I
you do
always
it.
loved playing Georgia early in
Only
the
if you do it in the
season.
voice. Only if you do it in the voice. Give me
I
your
don't know.
best
I've
Steve
never tried
Spurrier
a
impression.
Spurrier. I've never tried a Spurrier impression before.
We don't even have a visor or anything.
Yeah, I don't even think I own a Vider.
If only we were in
Like
the
I
closet,
always
we'd have
love.
more.
That's not Spurrier, is it?
He said, I got you right here. Right?
Okay, you got it.
He said, I always love playing Georgia early in the season because you always know they're going to have a couple guys that are going to be suspended and out for that game, you know? And he's not wrong. Unfortunately, things have changed. They usually just end up in jail now because they're street racing, but, it is what it is. We don't judge, maybe you like to drive fast. It is what it is. Georgia doesn't do anything about it, so why should I care?
Well, I do encourage safe driving on our roadways. So,
Yeah, if you're
do the
traveling to
right thing behind
Tennessee,
the wheel.
if you're traveling to Tennessee, stay as far away from the Georgia bus as you can.
I got
All
nothing else.
right. So moving on to our favorite game of the week, I think me and Will can agree upon this game. This is going to be the game I'm locked into at 4:30 on the CW. If you don't have the CW, now's the time to call your local TV provider and get it because we got the Set It Off rankings haven't come out yet, but I got a good feeling that USF. Yes, that is right. The South Florida Bulls are going to be number one in the Set It Off rankings this weekend. Two top 25 wins, one of those being on the road at Florida, and the other being against the G5 playoff representative from last year in Boise State. And they just whooped up on both of them. They really dominated both of those games. I know the score didn't really reflected it, but the way that USF defense kind of dominated Florida was absolutely shocking to me, Will. But they hit the road there. They take that little short drive from Tampa down to Coral Gables, Florida, and this Miami team had a huge win in week one against Notre Dame. Carson Beck looks the part, but we've seen Carson Beck struggle at times. And are you completely sold on the Carson Beck thing right now? That's to be determined, man. But I know this Miami team has tons of talent, but you can't deny, Will, you got to be excited to watch this game if they're watching South Florida the last 2 weeks.
I am excited. And you mentioned the CW. I think this game is going to set an all-time record for the most watched program, most watched thing ever aired on the CW, and just love it for that network. They really lucked out getting this game. South Florida being as good as they are. Who saw that coming? But yeah, what an impressive start to the season. I'm a big believer in the Bulls. They just blew the doors off of Boise State, then going into the swamp and doing what they did. That was very impressive. And I got to tell you, I think they're going to hang with Miami too. I just really believe it. Something about that Bulls team.
2007 vibes, man. This was not a game that I think me and you thought about maybe 48 hours ago that we were even going to be talking about this week. But, here we are talking about USF at Miami this weekend, a top 20 matchup in the AP, a top 5 matchup in the Set It Off rankings. Like, it doesn't get much bigger than this. This is where College Game Day should have been, Will. They should have been right there on the CW. College Game Day, the whole shebang down there in Coral Gables. But it's going to be a good game. I think South Florida has enough to actually compete with Miami. I don't think they have enough to win the football game because I think Miami is very talented. I think Carson Beck is that steady Eddie that they kind of needed at quarterback. And it has just been, you know, that consistency they've been looking for on defense, and they kind of got that the first 2 weeks. They didn't allow a point last week. They held Notre Dame to under 24 points and were able to win that football game. So I'm looking for this Miami team to kind of make another statement here and prove a lot of the doubters wrong. Mario Cristobal is going to have them guys ready, and of course they get this game at home. So that's never a bad thing when you're playing big games, is getting those games at home.
Yeah, will the Miami crowd show up for this one though? I know it's easy to show up for Notre Dame, but in the past I've seen a lot of empty seats in that stadium. So will they have that home field advantage? Will people travel down from Tampa maybe take the short ride down to? I mean, somehow South Florida is going further into South Florida to play this game, but maybe their fans will feel really inspired and show up too. I don't know. Special season happening for South Florida.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun matchup. That is for sure. Right now, the spread is Miami 16 and a half, Will.
Too
I mean,
much. Too
we are
much.
talking about a team that was a 18 and a half point dog against Florida. Your boy picked them to cover. All right, just throwing that out there.
I picked them
Um,
too.
yeah, and I think the South Florida team can definitely cover that 16 and a half. But the only thing with South Florida now you have to watch out for is you are not catching anybody off guard anymore. Like Miami is razor focused on you. There is no, oh, we're just going to sneak into this thing flying under the radar. Like you are here now and the big boys know you're here and we've seen that movie before a lot where these teams come out of nowhere. The Indianas, the a team like Tennessee, when they play teams like Georgia, honestly, and they go and they maybe get a couple big wins there, but when you meet the top tier teams, things get real in a hurry there. But I think if South Florida can find a way to maybe create a couple turnovers and get Carson Beck to turn the football over, I think that's their only way of winning. I think if Miami plays a clean brand of football, that they're just going to control the pace of this game. I don't see Miami or South Florida's offense being able to like go in and have a shootout. They haven't played extremely well on offense, but the defense has made the major improvement for South Florida. So is it going to be one of those games where USF can kind of steal a couple turnovers, steal a couple possessions here and there, and hang in there and keep it close? Or is this going to be one of those games where Miami plays clean ball and then you might see a situation where Miami actually does win and cover? Because I think Miami just has too much talent. This is my team that I picked to win the ACC. Obviously, South Florida is a great story, but we've seen this movie before. The Cinderella stories in college football don't last long, Will.
Wild things happen on the CW. You saw that Baylor SMU game. Watch out.
All right, our fourth game on the list that we are going to be previewing. And honestly, I think this could be one of the sleeper games that kind of nobody's really talking about. An NBC game, 7:30 at night, Notre Dame and Texas A&M. Texas A&M obviously wants to return the favor from last year when Notre Dame went down to College Station and took care of business in week 1. Well, can A&M beat their first tough task here? They kind of got off to a slow start in both of their first two games, but now is the time. This is kind of what you've been building up for if you're Texas A&M, to kind of make that statement that you're not going to be Texas 8-4 anymore. And Notre Dame, if you're Notre Dame, you are in wounded animal mode. This is probably your playoff life is on the line Saturday night, because I don't see a world where Notre Dame gets in this thing, even if they win out and win every game by 40. It's going to be hard for me to think about a Notre Dame team with 2 losses to probably the best 2 teams that they played all season and still making the playoffs. I just don't see that happening. So a very important game in Saturday night in South Bend. Right now, Notre Dame sits as a 6.5-point favorite in this game, but A&M has looked good. They have that same kind of contrasting style as Notre Dame. They really want to run the football, play physical defense. This is going to be one of those games where you probably want to hammer the under. This is going to be like an Iowa football game, I think. A lot of run plays, a lot of punting. That key turnover is probably going to be what kind of determines this football game. But this game's going to be a close game, I think, Will.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I agree with what you said about Notre Dame. They can't lose this game. They're not playing in a conference. And, you could argue that Miami and Texas A&M are the 2 toughest games on their schedule. And if they lose both of those, that ain't going to look good. Even if you do win out, you're right about Texas A&M always going 8-4, though. And you think about where are those 4 losses going to come from. Yeah, it might happen here. Notre Dame is going to be inspired after losing that Miami game. They're going to have it under the lights at home. That's going to be a charged up environment. And they also have had an extra bye week. I mean, it's weird to think about getting a bye week in week 2, but Notre Dame had it. So they've had 2 weeks to get ready for this game. I know on our live show I was saying A&M because of SEC biases, but when I use my head a little bit, I don't know. It seems like Notre Dame might have the advantage here.
Yeah, and we talked about like that desperation, almost that same kind of thing we're talking about with Florida here going to Baton Rouge. It is just obviously you get the benefit of having this game at home, but I really think the X factor in this game is going to be Marcel Reed. If we see the Marcel Reed that everybody's kind of talking about this offseason and not the guy that we saw in a lot of big games last year where he struggled to throw the football, if they can find any type of offense through the air with Marcel Reed. We already know how dangerous he is with his legs, and he adds another dynamic to that run game that they really want to do with that ground and pound stuff. But they have a transfer guy, Mario Craver from Mississippi State, that came in. They had Casey Concepcion coming in from NC State, who is their star transfer portal guy. So they have two really good receivers out there. But what does Marcel Reed look like when the lights are brightest and you're going up against a Marcus Freeman defense that in all means is one of the better units in the country, as they usually are. So this is going to be one of those low scoring physical games, the exact way both of these teams want to play it. It is going to be like classic, like old style SEC football where they are just lining up. Everybody knows they're running it, and it's just can you stop it type mentality. So I'm looking forward to this game. I really am. This is going to be, unfortunately, at the same time as the LSU Florida game. So I'm probably not going to be able to watch a lot of it, but I will be for sure on the plane ride back checking out at least the highlights of this football game after I find out who wins. But I really think it comes down to the quarterbacks. What do you get from C.J. Carr? What do you get from Marcel Reed? Marcel Reed started majority of the games last year. This is his first year. We talked about it. We're going to talk about it again this segment. It's quarterbacks who are making their first starts on the road. This is probably one of the tougher environments that Marcel Reed's going to play in, that he has played in so far. So, I mean, C.J. Carr gets the chance to bounce back here. I don't think he played terrible against Miami. So, if Notre Dame can find a way to convert a lot of those field goal attempts into touchdowns, and I think that's what this game is really going to come down to. It's going to be who inside the 20 can finish drives with touchdowns and not field goals, because field goals are not going to win you this football game.
You mentioned like how loaded this slate is. Yeah, where are we gonna look in that night window? We got Florida LSU. This game, South Carolina Vandy, also a night game that has my attention, of course. Just a loaded slate this week. You'd think A&M Notre Dame, that could have been good enough to get game day again, but didn't work out just because of all these other great matchups this week.
Yeah, it is definitely a matchup that a lot of people are going to be wanting to watch, but it's going to be one of those things, man. Thank God for YouTube TV. If you don't have YouTube TV by now, you got to get it, because the multi-view stuff is a lifesaver. And yeah, people complain that you can't pick what games you have on it, and it sucks sometimes, but it's better than having nothing, guys. Like, you just gotta deal with it. I mean, when God gives you the blessing of having 4 college football games on one screen at a time, you just gotta take what you can get. Don't be greedy. Don't be greedy, Will. All right, just take what you can get. And we'll see. We'll see what happens Saturday night, because I know you're going to be watching all these games. Unfortunately, I say unfortunately, but I'm going to be screaming my butt off for LSU to win on Saturday night. But this is definitely one of the games that I'm going to want to watch for sure. All right, our last game on the slate. This is going to be the first game that pops up on your TV on Saturday. You get done watching game day from good old Rocky Top on Saturday morning, and we're hopping straight into a battle for ACC bragging rights here. Will, we got a team in Clemson that is struggling, to say the least. And then you have a team in Georgia Tech that's that new up-and-coming team, and boy, Brent Pry has a amazing record against ranked teams at his time in Georgia Tech, and boy, does he have a big one on Saturday. That's right, noon, ESPN. Georgia Tech is hosting the Clemson Tigers, the number 12 team in the country, obviously losing that game to LSU in the opening week and then being down 16-0 against Troy there in the first half, but they were able to find a way and pull away there at the end. Obviously, Clemson has a lot of talent on this roster, but what are we going to get out of Clemson? We have no clue. I don't think any even Clemson fans know what they're going to get out of their team every week, but we know one thing, Will, we're going to get out of old Georgia Tech, and that is a lot of Haynes King, the man, the myth, the legend. He has done incredible things over his time now in A&M lore, and now at Georgia Tech. He is just, I don't know, he is a fan favorite. There is not a lot of people that are not on the Haynes King train. He is a guy that program needed so bad, and he has carried this program into talks now that people really think that this team can compete for an ACC championship But boy, do they have to pass this test, Will, because if Georgia Tech wants to get where they're going, these are the type of teams that they're going to have to beat. So, how you feeling about the Yellow Jackets? How you feeling about Clemson going into this big Week 3 matchup?
Well, first off, you mentioned they need to pass this test. I was looking at their schedule. This is the only ranked opponent I believe they have in ACC play, like using the current rankings. Their next ranked opponent after Clemson, Georgia, all the way at the end of the season. So just an absolutely huge game. And if they can clear this hurdle, sky's the limit for the Yellow Jackets. And I'm a big believer. I had them as my preseason ACC champion. I love what they did last year. They were able to beat Miami and then take Georgia down to the wire. That crazy 8 overtime game. Georgia Tech, they're a team on the rise. Clemson, I don't know. I don't like what I'm seeing from them now. You talked about that Troy game, but being down 16-0 to Troy, and I mean you did have a good second half, but I don't know. I'm not liking the way Clemson's going. We'll see what Dabo Sweeney's able to put together in practice this week, but that's a tough task for Clemson going on the road, keep in mind, to Georgia Tech this week.
Yeah, it's been rough. I mean, we are talking about a Clemson team that has all the keys. I mean, this is the top returning production team in the entire country. I mean, so we know what they are. We know what they can be. It's just how in the world are they going to get to that point? Because right now, they cannot run the ball, Will, and they are so one dimensional on offense. I mean, LSU held this team to 30 something rushing yards, and LSU was one of the worst rushing defenses in the country. Now, granted, they made a ton of upgrades on the defense, and they're a lot better than they were last year, but still, this team really thought that the loss of Phil Maffa and replacing him with a guy in wide receiver Adam Randall was going to be just a plug and play type thing, but obviously they have not figured that thing out over there in Clemson because they need to take some of this pressure off of Cade Klubnik, and they have to establish some type of running game to help him out. This is a guy who's thrown for 400 yards in 2 total games, so he is just over 200 yards a game, under 60% completion percentage. He is throwing the ball a ton, and that is not a recipe for success. We kind of talked about it with LSU and Nussmeier. If you can't run the ball and you have to rely on a guy like Nussmeier to throw the ball 40 times, that is not the ideal situation that these teams want to be in. So can Clemson figure things out this week and find that run game? Georgia Tech's defense is not one of the better units in the country at stopping the run, so maybe Clemson can get things going, but to me, the ultimate X factor in this game is Haynes King. This man is just the epitome of this Georgia Tech program. We have seen him do incredible things. He is one of the toughest players and a fan favorite by many. This Georgia Tech team revolves around Haynes King, and he can single-handedly be the driving force to why this Georgia Tech team ends up in Charlotte at the end of the season.
Yeah, and that's what I'm believing is going to happen, but we're going to have to watch it all play out. I'm really excited for this one, though.
And from the Georgia Tech side, you have to look at the dynamic duo as far as the quarterback run, and this kind of feels like the A&M style offense that they have with Marcel Reed and Le'Veon Moss and those backs there. You have Haynes King, who's a dual threat, but people forget Jamal Hines is a stud running back for Georgia Tech, and this is a Clemson defense that gave up 100-plus yards rushing to Troy, gave up 100-plus yards rushing to LSU. So this defensive line really, for Clemson, has to prove their worth. This is a team last year that got gashed in the run game, and all of their losses, they gave up almost over 200-plus yards a game in the games that they lost in 2024. And that trend seems to be kind of fitting the same thing here. You hear about the NFL draft grades, but those are pass rushing grades, and unfortunately pass rushing is just one stat, and stopping the run is a lot more important because you can't get to those pass rushing situations if you're giving up 5 to 7 yards a carry, and that's exactly what Georgia Tech wants to do. Like I said, Georgia Tech is a built-in power running option style team, and they just want to go out there and they just want to line up and run it right down your throat. And Clemson's going to know what's coming. Georgia Tech's going to know what's coming. It should be a great matchup. Right now, this spread is 9.5 for Clemson. I know you're probably leaning Georgia Tech for sure, but I mean, we've seen this before, Will. I mean, where Clemson looks bad and then something clicks for them, and they just go on and start routing up ACC schools. So, is that one of those games this week here? That's to be determined. I don't know, man. It's a lot of inconsistency. It's hard for me to put a lot of stock in the Clemson bank right now.
Yeah, we'll see what they can come up with, but I'm having trouble with that too.
Yeah, the good news is this game is in Atlanta. Georgia Tech is the home team, so they will have that going for them. Obviously, a noon kickoff is not probably ideal for the Georgia Tech fan base, but definitely a game you're going to want to watch there at the noon window. So that's going to wrap it up for today,
Hey,
guys.
before we wrap this up, you're leaving out a few games. We just gotta give a shout out to.
We are not talk. If you talk about Purdue, I'm ending the show right now. I will hit stop
No, no, no.
right
We
now.
gotta talk about the South Carolina Gamecocks
They
hosting Vanderbilt.
do
Battle of
they play?
Unbeaten's big.
All,
What?
all I know is Diego Pavia is coming in there. He's going to torch that South Carolina team. All right, I got a matter of fact. Now you've opened this can of worms. We're going to add this to the segment. Clip it right here, Will. All right,
What?
we are
What?
talking. We are talking about South Carolina and Vanderbilt. One of the most underrated games of the weekend, I would say, besides Purdue and Southern California. This probably has the most impact on Will's life this weekend. And Diego Pavia called his shot in the offseason. All right, he's been talking. All right, he's a little fella up there in Nashville. All right, but Vanderbilt got a little quiet confidence this offseason, and for some reason, he has circled this game as the game that he wanted to win most this year. And boy, does
This
he
is
get
the
his
Super
chance
Bowl.
here in Week 3. As Vanderbilt, after playing a common opponent, well, we saw what South Carolina did against Virginia Tech, and we saw what Vanderbilt did against Virginia Tech. And I gotta say, I was left more impressed with Vanderbilt. So, what does this game look like? I am very concerned about South Carolina. I feel like this Mike Shula thing on the offensive side of the ball. If you take out the crazy special teams play from South Carolina the last couple weeks, Will, do you realize that the offense under Mike Shula in 3 games against Illinois, and then week 1 against Virginia Tech, and then last weekend against South Carolina State has scored 17 offensive points in all 3 games. Only 17 points. Do you think 17 points is good enough to get you a win on Saturday night?
I mean, no, but I mean, special teams is a big part of the South Carolina identity, and just watch out for those punt returns now. 3 punt return touchdowns. How about that?
Yeah, at what point do you just stop kicking the ball to Vakari Swain? Like that has got to be something that's got to change. But South Carolina rolls into this game as a 5.5 point favorite, and you give the 2.5 point swing or the 3 point swing that Vegas usually gives to the home team. So I mean that you're looking at a 2.5, in that range kind of game. This game will be on SEC Network. It'll be a night game. We know how Willie B gets at night. And I'm not saying that Vanderbilt's just going to waltz in there and it's going to be easy, but man, I think Vanderbilt is just built different. What Clark Lee has done with this program, you as an SEC fan can honestly respect what he has done to that program as far as bringing it from where it was to what it is now to where we are having real conversations about Vanderbilt competing against some of these top tier teams. I mean, South Carolina is the number 11 team in the country, and they are going on the road, and they are 5.5 point underdogs. Like, that is unheard of for a Vanderbilt team.
Yeah, I will say it's going to be a night game at Willie B. Gamecock fans are very charged up for it. I'm considering going to the game myself. I've been monitoring ticket prices. It's like $200 per ticket just to get in right now. That's kind of unheard of for me. I haven't seen South Carolina tickets like that. So the fans, they really want to be there. They really want to see this team. South Carolina, they are a work in progress. I will admit that. They need some time to get into their own, and yeah, but that's the beauty of this schedule, the way it lines up. They get, a nice, relatively calm September where they don't have to play any of the big dogs. Vanderbilt, please don't be playing this in your meeting and coming and beating
Please,
South
God.
Carolina.
Put
Are
it
they
in
watching this?
put it in
Is
the
this
hype
is this
video.
bulletin board? No,
No, put him in the hype
no.
video. Vanderbilt is calling you out. I'm DMing Diego Pavia. I'm sending him this clip.
Vanderbilt's a real team. They're serious. They're a
Nah, it's too
serious
late.
threat.
It's too late. It's already been
No.
flipped. Yeah. So South Carolina's biggest concerns right now is obviously on the offensive side of the ball. Will you have this guy in Lenora Sellers who is Superman, but right now they're not letting him do his Superman powers. Like this offensive line has been atrocious through 2 games, Will, and you haven't been able to run the ball with their running backs. And I kind of understand what South Carolina's been doing, playing it cautious. Like you don't want Lenora Sellers getting beat up in the early parts of the season because we know what he means to this team. And but it's like if not now, when? Because you are getting into the meat of your schedule. There is no more room for, this isn't South Carolina State where you can go in there and play bad and still find a way to win because Vanderbilt's taking this game very seriously, clearly, and South Carolina better be ready to go Saturday night. And I expect them to have a better offensive plan and use Lenore Sellers a lot more in the quarterback run game and using his legs because right now I think the offseason hype kind of got to him a little bit. A lot of people talking about how he needs to be better as a passer, and so he's kind of forcing himself to be a passer. And sometimes when Superman is just good at what he does, you just got to let him be Superman, Will. And I think South Carolina just needs to open it up this weekend and let him do his thing because we saw what happens when he can do his thing, Will. He can carry you, and that's what's going to take on Saturday night because if you keep getting the same offensive performances, you keep, getting blessed with these punt returns and special teams plays. Well, what happens when those don't happen, Will? It's not going to be good.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm scared. Hopefully they can get it together because, they got to get it together quick. Vanderbilt, they're good. Missouri now entering the rankings after their big win over Kansas. It doesn't get any easier as you go. So, fingers crossed.
Yeah,
Oh,
well, what? Go ahead.
oh, are we still talking South Carolina, Vandy?
No, I'm going to wrap it up.
Okay, then let me just get into this real quick. And one other thing I wanted to mention, I've been talking about Purdue for weeks now. This is a huge test. They get the University of Southern California coming into their building. It's a big-time 3:30 CBS game of the week. Big test for them.
Game of the week is a stretch.
What?
Game of the week is a stretch.
Well, it's CBS's biggest game.
Do you know what the game of the week last week was, Will? It was like 1,000,000-3 loss from Oklahoma State against Oregon. That was your CBS game of the week last week. So what are we expecting out of our Purdue Boilermakers this week, William?
Well, it's a tough task. I admit USC West Coast will be a much tougher opponent than Southern Illinois and Ball State that they've played so far. But I still believe in Purdue. And if they win this game, you'll start believing in them too, right?
No. But Purdue walks into this game as a 21.5-point underdog this weekend. Not ideal. Not ideal situation for Purdue. Not very, not up in the talent standards. But, we've seen USC lose these types of games before. So I'm not saying it's impossible. But, yeah, we're not doing this. We're not previewing Purdue. We are just going to kind of wrap things up here. And that's all we have for tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's show. We enjoyed it. Week 3 is going to be awesome slate. Make sure you're checking out for everything that we're going to be posting this week. We got a couple things coming to you. And if you're not already, follow us on all the socials. We're on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all of that good stuff. And make sure when we go live on Saturday nights, we're going to be letting you guys know. But we are going to be doing post-game shows majority of the season. It's just going to be kind of a schedule dynamic thing here. But thank you guys for watching. We appreciate you guys, and we will see you guys next time.